It was the fourth day that Billy had woken up to find that he felt nothing. No emotion, no fear, no happiness. Nothing. It was beginning to frighten him. Every day was becoming worse than the last, more empty than the last. Once again, he crawled out of his cold bed to wander around his apartment, finding things to do. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, and he was now going on 4. Food did not seem appealing anymore, nor did much of anything. Lately, it was just the empty feeling he now had, and the train. That damn train. It made it hard to sleep at night, and stay focused in the daytime. Billy had lived in his apartment for 5 years now, and he had never, ever heard a train until recently. It sounded as if it were speeding its way down the rails mere inches from the walls of his apartment. It haunted him constantly, mainly because he knew for a fact, that there was no railway near his apartment. If one had been built, he would have known. Then again, he wasn't sure what to think about anything these days, what was real and what wasn't. It was difficult for Billy to fall asleep that night. It wasn't just the train either. The train, speeding back and forth like there was no tomorrow. It was the unsettling emptiness that was creeping upon him, consuming him. He lay awake that night, listening to the train go back and forth. After a few hours, he heard something peculiar. The train stopped just outside where he lay. He heard footsteps next door, then the sound of the train doors opening. He didn't know what to think about this. Was the train even real, or just a byproduct of his imagination? How could it stop and pick up passengers from his apartment building when they were 10 stories up? 5th day, and still that empty feeling. Billy watched a lot of TV that day, and found that nothing interested him no matter what he watched. The day seemed to go on forever. He played some solitaire, wandered around his apartment for several hours for no real purpose, and then decided it was time to take a nap. By the time he woke up from his nap, it was nightfall. Suddenly, Billy began to feel uneasy. Something wasn't right. It was the train again. Where had it been all day? It was usually making a constant racket back and forth, non-stop. Billy decided that it was time for him to finally see what this mystery train looked like. Up until now, he had feared catching a glimpse of it, but he wasn't sure why. He crept silently to his window, glancing out into the cold and unpromising night. It was getting closer now. He could see the blinding light of the engine creeping ominously towards him. The engine slowly passed his window, along with a few other cars. Then came the passenger cars. Had Billy any feeling left in him, he would have been terrified and chilled all the way to the bone. The passengers showed no sign of anything that would represent life or productivity. Their cold, penetrating eyes watched him as the train passed, leaving Billy unable to leave his window, not believing the horrid beings he had just witnessed. Billy got little sleep that night. The cold, wretched faces of the train's passengers, playing over and over in his mind. He didn't know what was going on anymore. That morning, he continued with his usual pointless routines, but he could not shake that train out of his mind. Why was it there? Where did it come from? Another thing bothering Billy was the fact that he had not heard from his neighbors. Where had everybody gone? Billy felt more empty now than he had ever before in his life. The next day, Billy felt different. The wretched feeling of nothingness had been replaced with a kind of hope, a yearning for something good to happen. The train. For some reason, the thought of the train made him feel a sense that everything was going to be okay. Feeling better than he had in days, Billy strolled to the bathroom to examine his strange condition in the mirror. Billy stared at his reflection in disbelief. The face staring back at him was the same as the cold, horrible faces he had seen on the train, and it was not the only face he saw. Several of the beings were gathered behind him, crowded into his apartment, watching him. One of the beings appeared to be the train's conductor. In the mirror's reflection, he could see a pair of phantom doors near the window of his apartment. All at once, a feeling of understanding came over him. He remembered. The fire. It had consumed everything. Nobody in the apartment building survived. He could remember the horrible screams echoing through the walls. He could remember the smoke entering his lungs finally giving up on him. And then, the emptiness. Now he knew why. The beings on the train were his neighbors, the people he had come to know over the last 5 years. Now they had come to take him along with them, where he belonged, with the others who had shared his demise. He remembered an old saying, that the dead only see what they want to see. He could now see what his apartment truly was, a charred ruin of what had once been his home. There was nothing left for him here. It was time to let go of this place. The train's conductor stretched his hand out to Billy. Billy smiled, and at last entered the train to go home.